on, it's coming. This meeting is being recorded. Does everybody see it or no?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so beyond productivity, how does AI impact and how we feel at work? Okay, so again, it was a little bit of an emotional piece, which part of that will be, but again, it's a huge study and looking forward to having you all on that. So, okay, so quick polling question here. And actually two quick ones, and you'll appreciate these, Paul. My machine is so slow. I'm so sorry. Hopefully I can get this going. You know what? It's still whatever. So let me just keep. Oh my gosh, it's not even letting me move the machine. Are you serious? Hold on. Just give me a second here.
What
I know.
percentage is that machine you're working off of there, Steve?
I don't know. Zoom just canceled.
We've lost Steve.
Oh, he's completely gone now.
Yeah, let me try this again,
Yes.
everybody. Sorry. You should be seeing the screen right about now. Let me skip the polling questions just in case, and if I can get them, I will, okay? Okay, here we go. So a big thank you to Chris Morrissey over at Zoom last week. He was the general manager and general manager in GTM of sales regarding Zoom Contact Center and customer experience. Great stuff. If you didn't attend it, you got to, or listen to the replay. It was that good. So he was talking all about your clients' voice security risks and AI-enhanced social engineering on the rise, and how are the clients ready? And it was a lot about the future. So it was great stuff. Quick famous quote: "I predict the internet will soon go spectacularly supernova and 1996 catastrophically collapse." True statement, right? No, actually, it was Robert Metcalfe, the founder of 3Com, and he actually proceeded to eat his own words literally during his keynote speech in 1999, where he blended a copy of his printed column with some liquid and drank it. So, so just to let you know, sometimes these famous quotes are not always true. So again, we've got this week Paul on Beyond Productivity, and looking forward to hearing what you've got there, Paul. Fran, we've got happy hour tomorrow, so I'll give you the mic there.
Yes, we do have happy hour tomorrow, and for all new members, let me know if you don't have the invitation. I will send that over. And it sounds like we just need to get caught up. We've got several people that haven't been on the last couple weeks or couple of times. We meet every other week at 6 Eastern on Thursday just to catch up, and the topics are a lot of fun. It's interesting. So yeah, bring a beverage, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, Steve.
Great. Okay. And then Dave, over to you.
Thanks, Fran. Always look forward to happy hour. You never know what topics are going to get discussed, and it's not recorded, by the way. So,
and no AI is invited. Absolutely, what's talked about in happy hour stays in happy hour.
So we're just days away from the annual conference, and you should, as a VAC member, receive an invite sometime this week for a call preceding the fireside chat next Wednesday, and it's to go over all the logistics you'll need to know about for attending this year's conference. So if you're a VAC member, whether you're playing golf, you're participating in VAC night, you're presenting at the annual conference, you don't want to miss this conference, because we're going to go over every checklist item to ensure that you're fully engaged and you have a great time, and there's no surprises when you get to the conference. So join us at 1 o'clock next Wednesday, and we look forward to chatting with you. Fran and I will be hosting it. So it's all VAC that's attending the annual conference. So back over to you, Steve. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. All right. And Mike, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody. Looking forward to this presentation today. So just as reiterate on Dave's comment, we're looking forward to the conference. We're 10 days away. So All the consultants, you'll be getting a know before you go notice for you so you can see what you need to do. And we look forward to
Lost
seeing
your audio,
everybody
Mike.
in Reno.
No, he's there. He's good.
So I appreciate it. And thanks for everybody for all the work you've done for the conference. So it's going to be great. So
It
don't miss
sure
it.
will. Hey, so I did find these polls. So here's the first one. So what percentage of employee satisfaction has AI improved on, according to the study? 0 to 10%, 11 to 20, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, 51 to 60, 61 plus. Please vote. And obviously, Gen AI is still very young, so I'm sure it will change, beyond this. And let me just, I'll just give it another second or two, and we'll see the results. Okay, thanks everybody. Let me share the results. Oh, come on. Why is this so slow today? Okay, here we go. Wow, I've never seen this machine so slow. I'm only going to do this one because it's so slow today. Yeah, I needed to really reboot my machine. Sorry, I thought this was going to be faster. But I'll share the results before they finally appear. But it looks like 50% voted 11 to 20, followed by 31 to 40%, and then followed by 0 to 10, 41 to 50, or 61%. The actual number in the study was, I think, 34%. So let me do this. I'm going to stop my share. Okay, and I think the only way I can do that is is by exiting Zoom temporarily. So yeah, I'll be right back. Okay, but Paul, take it away. Okay.
Sounds good. So it seems as though I've inherited some of the troubleshooting that Steve was going through, and that I have to request to present because there's already a presenter showing up on Zoom. And as you might have guessed, I think he is the only person with permission to let me take over that presentation from his current screen share. So we might have to wait a second for him to rejoin the chat before I'm able to share, but just a brief introduction, perhaps, while we wait for him to jump back on this call. Firstly, thanks for the time. I'm really excited to be able to have the chance to share some of our latest research with you. I say some of our latest research because we usually conduct between 3 and 5 pieces of research every single year, and they really range on a number of topics from meeting rooms to the contact center to cybersecurity. And as you might have guessed, AI is a core topic for us, not only in terms of how our products might be able to enable better signals to feed into AI platforms through video and audio, but also just for the broader interest that I think we have on how we can make work life better. And so it's a huge privilege of mine to be able to direct the research that we're able to do, and then hopefully share some interesting new insights with people when I get the opportunity to. So thank you firstly for having me. I'm excited to go through the material today. I think well-being is usually a topic that has people shrugging their heads or seems like a little bit of a peripheral topic compared to sort of the productivity that we're so used to tracking and so focused on when it comes to almost every type of work. I mean, ultimately, everybody's got a bottom line to keep. And so I think oftentimes when we talk about AI, we go, great, we're going to get more productivity from that. But then when we talk about well-being with AI, people kind of go, well, that doesn't make sense. So I'm hoping that by the end of the next 40 minutes or so, that link is a lot more tangible, and perhaps there's some new ways of thinking around the race with AI, the adoption of AI and its evolution in the workplace over the coming 12 to 24 months. I say 12 to 24 months because I think anything further than that, looking out with sort of a telescope, is an exercise in trying to have a crystal ball. Things are moving so quickly that it is really hard to be able to make any educated guesses beyond that. So let me start off by sharing the screen that I can now do. I will take it, unless anybody lets me know otherwise, that this is all visible and working.
Great.
And I'll talk through a brief sort of agenda for the day. So we're first going to look at sort of what the study was at a glance. Obviously, before I get into any results, it's going to be key for everyone to know what we did. Then I'll jump into the meat of the presentation for today, what we learned, and then I think a slight reframing on some next steps that most businesses should be considering taking based on the insights that we've gotten to really accelerate and enhance the next year's worth of AI adoption. And that's really agnostic of any industry or any type of company size. I think these types of gains are there to be had by every single person, no matter what level, company size, or country you're working in. So if we jump into the study at a glance, I think what we were really trying to figure out was AI is as much about what it's able to do or what productivity gains it's able to empower for everybody, but it's also a change management project. And one of the biggest change management projects that we've ever had. It's been likened to things like the rise of the internet. And while we might have known that whether it was the discovery of electricity or the discovery of the internet, that there was a lot of potential in something, it didn't necessarily mean that we knew how to navigate it or how quickly we could find good uses for something like this. So rather than seeing all of the things that AI could do for a business or the productivity gains, we wanted to figure out what does the experience of work feel like in the age of AI. We've got something that's really predicted to dramatically change the way in which we work, all of the workflows that we have and use each day, how much of our work is able to be automated. And I think the first step of that is how much do people lean into it? How much do they want to adopt it or see value in it? And so it's about a cultural change management process as much as just what gains do we get from productivity. So to better understand this sort of well-being and the response that people have to this transformation, we partnered with the Happiness Research Institute. So essentially, it might not be all to do with happiness, but this is the world's leading think tank on happiness. They're headquartered in Denmark, which is where I'm based. And if you sort of follow global happiness rankings, you'll see that often the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, are consistently ranked as some of the happiest countries on earth. And so this group of experts are really renowned for setting the standard in what you can measure, both in the workplace and your personal life, in terms of what truly drives human well-being. And so together we set out to explore how workers are experiencing this rise of AI, not just in terms of things like productivity, which we did dive into, but also in terms of purpose, connection, and happiness. We did this across, as Steve mentioned, 11 markets with just over 3,700 knowledge workers, and we had representation across over 20 industries. So when it comes to this, we had two lead researchers. We had the CEO of the Danish Happiness Research Institute, and then a senior analyst who's currently stateside doing his PhD at Harvard. So we feel like we were really well represented in terms of the credentials of the individuals who carried this out. And I think for us, it's really important to carry this research out with third parties because we're not just here to drink our own Kool-Aid. We're trying to really go to the experts in an industry to help get to the bottom of a research question that we have. So speaking of those research questions, I've mentioned some of them, but we really tried to figure out questions like, what is the current feeling among today's workforce? Are they happy? Are they stressed? Are they satisfied? Are they anxious? I think if we look at sort of the state of 2025, we've had massive changes and transformations. We'd barely gotten into the pandemic before we were being pulled out of the pandemic. Every company has been making headlines for return to office mandates or maintaining a hybrid working setup. And then at the same time, you have these massive generational shifts. There seem to be countless headlines that I see every day in the media around how Gen Z have different expectations, and we're sort of embracing one of the most diverse workforces in terms of different generations all being at the table that I think we've seen in a long time. And then AI comes in like a wrecking ball to crash the party. Just as we think we're stabilizing post-pandemic, everything's in a good cadence and rhythm or routine. AI comes and everybody's saying this is going to, again, completely revolutionize the way in which we work. So we also wanted to understand who's using AI, how they're using it, what impact does it have on things like their job satisfaction, their purpose, and their stress. A lot of the initial headlines that we saw around AI in the workplace was of it taking jobs, making people redundant, and there seems to be a very mixed set of emotions around whether we want to lean into this technology, whether we tell our bosses if we're actually using it or not. And So things like workplace satisfaction and purpose, and obviously stress, were quite important for us to uncover as well. And then what makes people thrive at work and what doesn't. This is sort of zooming out a little bit, maybe looking not just at AI, but what are the things that really make people want to show up every day at work. I can say from the start of this call, a Friday happy hour at 6 p.m. certainly sounds like a good reason to make me want to show up for work, but I'm sure there are lots of different drivers for people all over the world based on what they want from their jobs. And then ultimately, this is all to answer the question on how can businesses better prepare for this AI revolution. So now I'll dive into sort of what we learned. I think we're going to go into a few key topics. I'll skim over them, well, not skim over them, but I'll try and cover them sort of with a rapid data download. But we're going to start off by looking at sort of what are the current drivers of well-being at work, how satisfied are people, because ultimately, how satisfied or happy you are at work impacts how productive you are at work. So I think this link is growing more and more strong, and that's what I'm trying to drive a connection between in terms of if people are leaning into and using AI more, then they're probably going to be happier at work, which will make them more productive, which is ultimately what we're looking to get. But to do that, we first have to understand what's AI adoption looking like, who's using it and how are they using it, what's business's readiness and how prepared are business leaders and companies for this transformation and leading through it, and then what does effective change management look like? So some key takeaways for everyone on this call on what we think the steps you can take today or tomorrow are to better ensure that you're set up for success with whichever AI you're trying to use. So back to this topic that I've sort of covered at the beginning, but well-being isn't just a soft metric. It's not really a nice to have. And maybe you think it is based on the word, but I think ultimately whether we're talking about well-being or whether we're talking about productivity, well-being is a proxy for productivity. And ultimately, it's a signal of whether AI is working, not just technically, but culturally. So AI at its core is, as I've mentioned, a cultural shift. If we ignore it and we say, oh, our current way of working is good, we think everyone's productive, we think they're happy, then ultimately you could be caught in the dust. And so if you invest in it, everything moves faster. So I think this is sort of a critical moment, a bit of a watershed for most businesses to be able to shape the future of work, because the gains you get from successfully implementing it and learning to adopt AI into your workflows will ultimately have a compounding effect over time. And I think it starts by empowering employees with the full ecosystem, the right training, the right type of ongoing communication, the right type of leadership direction on how to use AI, and doing that with clarity and confidence and regularly. And so, as mentioned, we wanted to figure out how happy is the workforce and how are organizations set up to reap the rewards of AI, both in terms of being a driver of productivity, but also well-being. So the good news is today's workforce is pretty happy. So you have around 2 in 3 knowledge workers who we surveyed saying that they're pretty happy at work, 3 in 4 saying they're satisfied, and almost 3 in 4 saying that they feel a sense of purpose at work. So I think over the last 2 decades, there's been a lot of stress. We've had a lot of macroeconomic uncertainty. There's been a lot of conflict around the world. Media headlines aren't always a joy to wake up to every morning. There's always something that seems to be going wrong. But it seems as though people are actually pretty happy with their jobs right now. So I think that's a good pulse check to just sort of start off. And then interestingly, as sort of a question of, well, why are we looking at just happiness at work? Well, the research showed us that there's a really strong correlation between how people are satisfied at work, how happy they are at work, and then how they feel about life in general. So given that we spend most of our time at our desks, I think it's not that surprising to say that if you're happy in your job, you're generally pretty happy at life or in life. So workers who are satisfied with their jobs were 4.5 times more likely to be satisfied with life. And almost 2/3 of those who reported being really happy at work said they had a high life satisfaction as well. If we look at sort of this landscape of the last 5 years, where some people have been pulled back into the office, some people have been enabled with a little more flexible work, we tried to figure out what are sort of the core things that are driving people's happiness at work. And it was interesting to see that people crave purpose over perks. So I think gone are the days of being able to offer small work perks. Ultimately, it comes down to how engaged are you in your job and how much purpose do you feel that you have in it. And we saw that workers who said their job was interesting or that they were able to achieve their goals were twice as likely to say that they felt happy and purposeful at work. I think at the same time, it was interesting for us to see that
Oh,
those
hey,
who
Paul, let
found,
me just jump in here real quick. Sorry, this is Steve.
yeah,
So yeah, I've always shared, with the youth, if you will, as they're getting into, the workforce, that, your job is really, in three components, your job satisfaction. Number one is, of course, the actual work that you're doing. Okay. If you love it, then it's really not work. Unless you're in IT where you're stressed out more than once or occasionally. And then, of course, it's the working environment, right? If the culture is great, you'll want to stay. And then the perks and the salary are great, but they're like 90-day satisfaction. And then if the culture's not right, if the job's not right, no amount of money is really going to matter in the long term. And we've always shared that, and that always seems to be true amongst anybody that we've spoken with. So, which kind of parallels what you just shared. So,
absolutely. I mean, I think your point on sort of the culture being the cornerstone of work is my main sort of thinking on this. And it
Mhm.
seems to be that sort of a lot of research backs it up. People say that if you have friends at work, if you have someone who you sort of want to come and catch up with, Vern sharing photos post vacation, those are really sort of the pieces of glue that keep teams together.
Mhm.
And then I think, like you say, sort of things like salary, while impactful for sort of the reward that people feel and how recognized they are for their work, are sort of
Mhm.
not necessarily as important as sort of, do you have people who you want to work with, and do you feel that together as a team, those people who you want to work with and yourself are all sort of making some type of impact,
Sure.
or have a sense of purpose in whatever small or big way you would like.
Mhm.
So I think tied to that is sort of jumping back into it, Steve, the point around those who find their jobs interesting and are able to achieve their goals are twice as likely to feel satisfied at work. So it's just like what you're
Mhm.
saying. And you can
Yeah,
see the
yeah.
sort of differences on these graphs between people who find their jobs interesting versus not finding their jobs interesting, and those who can achieve their goals at work versus not being able to achieve their goals at work, and then the satisfaction that links to that. Then if we talk about all of these changes that are happening, it feels like there's barely a day that goes by before we see some big prediction on what's about to flip the world of work upside down. But most people are actually pretty optimistic about work right now in terms of the future of where it's going. So there was only 1 in 10 people who thought that something like AI would actually make their jobs less enjoyable.
Mhm.
On the contrary, most people think that ultimately this is something which like most technologies in the past, will come in and be a bit disruptive, but then ultimately benefit humans at the end of the day. You had almost 1 in 2 knowledge workers saying they think that that AI will make their work more enjoyable for themselves and their colleagues. And interestingly, the more people used AI, the more they were likely to feel optimistic about the future of work. So I think it's sort of a positive litmus test or indication of the power users amongst the workforce right now are only gaining an optimism about what this kind of technology could unlock for us in the future. So I think ultimately the takeaway for us from these initial findings was that small changes can really have a big impact to workforce well-being. It's like what you were saying now, Steve, around little things like culture, setting
Mhm.
up the right happy hours. And that could be giving people the chance to learn, helping them set and achieve their goals, or just making their jobs more engaging, that can really foster a much stronger workforce overall and have much less churn, whether it's churn in a contact center or churn in any type of job. That said, for all the optimism we have about the future of work, about AI, where it's at right now, still pretty early days, still pretty mixed emotions. So before we can start to sort of understand the effects of AI on something on well-being, we need to sort of better understand how it's being used right now. And I think our big takeaway is that despite the hype and the early sort of optimism, adoption is still really in its infancy. We see this from Microsoft studies to McKinsey studies across almost every industry, whether it's Gartner, Deloitte, any of the big sort of beacons of research are all correlating the research that we've done, which is really that despite the hype, usage is still quite low or adoption is still quite low. And so
Well,
we did
and there, sorry, Paul, not to interrupt, but there are
No,
certain
go for it.
segments like contact center as an example, right? Customer experience where, uh, people are concerned about their jobs. Are they going to be replaced by AI? What percentage? And of course, we always take the stance of, hey, improve on your SLAs and look at AI. Do it both, which
Yeah.
will which will manage the number of FTE reductions. Okay. And then, of course, just people in the writing sector, right? That has had a huge impact on that. And other segments that language translation too, I understand, is another segment that is, being affected. So I think, there's a fear factor also. People, are they going to keep their job in a year?
Exactly. And I think with something like the contact center, it's a great example because the complexity that we've seen in the space growing over the last few years has really sort of turned agents into needing to be super agents. The amount of training, the information that they need to retain, the complexity of the cases that they're handling has sort of increased the skill and training and volume of work that at least I've seen from a lot of the research that both we've done and we've seen in the industry. So I think ultimately something like AI's impact in a contact center scenario with agents will be not one of leading to a much bigger increase in redundancies, but actually on the contrary, like enabling agents to be far more effective. Maybe we will see a reduction in something like an AHT as a metric, but it should be empowering rather than replacing any people,
Agreed.
creating sort of
Agreed.
superhumans out of people.
Yeah, for sure.
If we look across the 20 industries we surveyed, including the contact center, which was one of those, we could see that sort of roughly 1 in 3 people are using AI for work at the moment. And if you look at people who are using it sort of across their lives, so getting some benefit from their personal lives as well as at work, that number drops quite dramatically to only 13%, so almost 1 in 10. And at the same time, you've got sort of highly skilled professionals of whom 1 in 3 haven't used AI at all. Whether this is sort of, like you say, fear-based because they feel that using AI will come to ultimately be at their demise
Yeah.
is still something that we need to look further into. I think there could be a lot of reasons for maybe you don't want to tell your boss doesn't want you to use it, you feel threatened by using it, but there's still a really divided room when it comes to how much people are leaning into this type of technology. So I think it's not to say AI hasn't entered the workplace. I saw an interesting statistic last week saying that sort of plug and play licenses like Copilot from Microsoft are now deployed in over 70% of Fortune 500 companies. So I think AI has definitely entered the workplace, as will not be a surprise for anyone on this call. But in most cases, it's really dipping a toe rather than sort of making a big splash. If we looked a little more at the segmentation, it was quite interesting to see that those in higher income brackets were more likely to be frequent users. I think one of the theories that we had around this was that if you're a high earner, then you could be in a more senior position or have a higher workload. And so really this could be down to people who are earning more, being incredibly busy and needing the support or able to lean into almost getting an assistant immediately to help reduce some of that workload. And then interestingly for me was the stat that I'm not sure how many people on this call are parents, but we saw that sort of 63% of frequent users are parents, which is also sort of tying back to that thinking around lots to juggle, lots of working on the go, trying to do school runs while taking calls and whatever else, and maybe trying to catch up in the evenings sometimes. And so being able to get some better usage from AI assistance is no surprise for parents leaning into the tech at the same time. But then we look at what people thought about is your boss, is your team, is your company ready for this? And the responses were resoundingly negative. So we thought that I think it comes to show pretty quickly that the reason for AI usage being quite low in the workplace so far is that only 30% of respondents said their company is taking the meaningful steps towards preparing for AI. You had almost 50% saying that they wanted more technical training to better understand how to use this, and 38% saying they actually wanted to have a full reskilling or upskilling, almost a requalifying to be able to better lean into knowing how this technology could be used in their specific job, whether it's being in a contact center or, like you mentioned, Steve, translation agencies, copywriting, all of these different industries, figuring out how can I make this work within my current day-to-day of work. And ultimately, this comes down to an impact on well-being. So we saw that workers who understand their company's AI strategy, having clear communication from leadership, are twice or almost 3 times as optimistic about their futures at that company. And where leadership explains to fails to explain the why behind AI, you get this overall drop in optimism and trust in a company. And you get, as an upshot or a result of this, much higher stress levels. So those who weren't trained but were maybe expected to use AI and sometimes were twice as likely to feel stressed. So I think this is where we sort of see some of the ways in which you can roll out AI more effectively. Now, if we look at sort of a double click on how does AI actually influence well-being, well, it's still in its early days when it comes to adoption, as we've just shown. But I think this impact on employee well-being, and sort of where I left off on the previous slide around, if you're twice as more stressed, if you're not getting clear communication around how to use a new tool or technology, then this really does start to bleed into not just your productivity, because maybe you're saying, oh, I'm not using AI right now, but I'm more stressed. I'm thinking about it more. It's kind of distracting me from my core job, even if I'm not using it. I've had unclear expectations from my leadership on what to do, but I know there are some tools out there that some of my team members are using. You can see how this could actually not just maintain the status quo, but start to reduce the overall impact of a workforce or team, or sort of have stress coming into the culture of a team that could be really strong. But then if we look at sort of the flip side of that, and who was using AI and who was a power user with AI, we could see that those people were actually reporting in our latest research feeling happier, feeling more purposeful, more satisfied, and more optimistic. So ultimately, this gets to sort of their well-being being better. And I think this was sort of the core finding that we got from this that was really interesting, was there is now a measurable link between AI use and improved well-being. So workers who were using AI at least once a day, and obviously every single team member, every industry has to figure out what this usage is. How can it make your life more easier, whether it's helping draft emails or taking meeting notes, or more niche and specific functionality within an industry or vertical like the contact center. But generally, across all industries, if people who were using AI came back to us and said that they had a higher job satisfaction and more optimism, they had almost twice as high of a happiness score overall than those who were using AI rarely or not at all. And they also scored higher on nearly every workplace well-being driver that we checked. So that's all of those factors that you and I were discussing just a little earlier, Steve, from the culture that you set to the Friday bars you might want to create to all of the perks and the purpose. It's really a 360. All of the well-being drivers that we surveyed across showed increases when we looked at who was using AI versus who wasn't. And so I think this is really a lever for improving how people feel at work. It's a reminder that technology adoption isn't just a productivity play. And so I think with that in mind, AI is already beginning to change how work feels, not just how it's done. We've often spoken about AI in terms of, again, these productivity benefits. So what's going to change in how we show up and what we get done at work each day? But I think the factor that's maybe being a little more ignored is how work actually feels. And so when we group workers by their usage frequency, how often they're using AI in their daily lives, you get this clear pattern that comes out where frequent AI users were consistently scoring higher on every workplace well-being driver. So that's from goal achievement to learning and development to the opportunities that they felt like they had access to in their jobs. So it really bleeds into this sort of 360 of so many things that I certainly wouldn't have expected it to have a direct link to, but that through this research and the Danish Happiness Research Institute, we were able to uncover. And I think not only that, but using AI was also boosting this optimism that I mentioned a little earlier around the future of work. So you saw that almost 3 in 4 people who used AI to collaborate were more optimistic around their future job satisfaction. You saw that 91% of people we surveyed were more likely to believe that their work would stay enjoyable in the future, and that 88% were more likely to feel their work will remain fulfilling in the long term. So as much as there's sort of this fear or trepidation around potential replacement or downscaling or resizing of teams because of AI, it seems that in fact the people who are using it the most actually have the highest optimism. And so ultimately
That's very interesting. You know what I mean? If you do take advantage, it can have, dramatic a dramatic impact on how you're doing your work, obviously. You look better, you sound smarter. Yeah, some of the note taking that, we use with our AI note taker is pretty extraordinary. It takes very complex conference calls and literally gives us all the answers in the order that is very easy to, show the client the results. And so, yeah, it can have a dramatic, effect. But interestingly, there was a comment that came up last week about AI in the future, Paul, that we'll be going to like a 3-day work week, in 10 years. And I think that's not reality because I think they talked about that back in the 1980s and it didn't quite happen. So it'll improve us. We'll be able to get more done with fewer people, but et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, almost a joke.
Yeah, I was asked to join a panel on AI, a panel discussion last year, and everyone was talking about the productivity gains. And I kind of said, well, ultimately, I hope that AI lets me just enjoy a few more glasses of red wine at the end of the week and get to it more quickly. So can completely agree with you on that. But I think, like you say, we're not about to shift to a 3-day work week.
Yeah.
So we might get some gains, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think we'll all, at least for the foreseeable future, be in our 5-day-a-week jobs.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
it is interesting, I think, to see ultimately that you get this sort of higher satisfaction, stronger purpose, and this more hopeful outlook ultimately. And so for us, it then shifts from this question on, well, what can AI do for your workflows and what can it do for your productivity? And it becomes this question of how can you reduce churn? How can you increase workplace satisfaction and strengthen culture or have more time to focus on culture? And if you want people to start feeling good about the future of work, then the more likely they are to feel good about the future of work directly ties to how much they are using AI already. So for us, it's then this takeaway message on it's not just technology, it's this culture changer. And it can both help but also harm well-being. And so this is why sort of this crossroads or watershed moment is more pivotal for us because it's not necessarily about, oh, I could save some time and have better meeting notes in the next month or two and feel a little more productive because of that. It could be something which in 2 or 3 years' time has sort of shaped far more drastically the path that some businesses have taken and others haven't.
Correct.
So I think one of the other interesting things for us that we saw from this is really that flexibility is key for those who are using AI right now. This comes back to sort of those who are busiest, the parents who are using it the most, but workers who are interacting with AI across a range of different inputs. So that's both by talking to AI, but also by typing to it. Are doing it when they're on the move a lot more, as I've sort of mentioned with hybrid work, working from anywhere. I think Vern is the best example with the Starlink. He can work from pretty much anywhere. I wouldn't just say within the US. I'm pretty sure he could make that happen anywhere in the world. But it comes down to this idea of when we have these busy lives, we're working flexibly from anywhere. We saw that nearly 2 out of 3 people who are using AI at work were engaging with it on the move. And I think this is interesting in terms of not just how work feels, but also how work is changing. And so we could see that people who were speaking to AI at least some of the time in their interactions, rather than just typing to it or getting meeting notes from it or whatever else, were doing so in a huge range of places, whether it was sort of taking meeting notes or sending emails while walking or biking, in a car on the commute, at home, in the office, or maybe kind of at a transit hub, taking a quick call or a meeting from an airport before they catch a flight. And I think this sort of that is up to an interesting next insight for us, which is really around this predicted shift with AI. And right now we've got these plug and play licenses with things like Copilot, but that the question for us is really not if, but when conversational AI will transform how we work. For a lot of people on this call for whom sort of contact center will be front and center or top of mind, I think conversations are really the basis for how most work takes place these days. And then it's almost analog, but we've relied on keyboards to do things that are asynchronous. So historically, most meetings and productive work or calls with people have been where true productivity lies. And then we followed up with emails. We had to type things with the keyboard, but ultimately we're able to speak much more quickly than we can type. And it seems as though most of the big tech leaders are in agreement that conversational AI, so having multiple agents, where if you're handling a customer query, you're able to speak to several AI agents to be able to get the right queries or responses you need, is really the future of where this space is going. And so right now, where prompts might be a little bit cumbersome or typed, Gen AI, and particularly the development of individual agents for specific use cases, trained on specific data sets or information, and being able to talk to them to access information in a heartbeat is really where the future of the space is going. So I think now we wanted to look at sort of, well, how can we move past the pilot? If we look at most companies and where they're stuck right now, you sort of have the awareness that we've gained over the last 2 years. You then sort of have this stage right now of figuring out more specific use cases, working with better prompting, better workflow design, perhaps starting to train different AI agents to be able to add more value within specific verticals or use cases. And then we're moving into this space where we need to sort of get stronger results in measurement, because I think most companies now, you have about 8 and 10 of them who've deployed AI across whatever industry. And then if you ask them whether they can justify or measure the P&L, what type of a bottom line impact is this having, you get 8 and 10 of them who cannot. So 80% of companies are saying, yeah, we've deployed AI. 80% of them also saying, but we have no idea how to quantify its impact. So I think this then begs the question on, well, that's great. We've got some research. We've got a few insights. What can we do to truly start to drive some type of change? And I know this is quite a busy slide, but I think for us, it's around these sort of 4 sides of a cube on education, exposure, encouragement, and communication. And this is really weaved together from all of the insight that we've gone through in the last 35 to 40 minutes, and what we think companies can do, because it's one thing just to sort of do a bit of a data download, look at what the signals are right now, what's happening with work, why we should maybe reframe some things to be around not just productivity, but well-being and drivers of purpose at work. But I think then with that, we're looking at, well, how can we educate people and build more confidence before this competence becomes urgent? We need to give people time to learn the new technologies and manage this change and digital transformation. And there are a bunch of ideas that you can see. I won't read through them all individually, but on what you could sort of do today within your organization to try and make sure that people are feeling well educated. And I guess hand in hand with that, it goes without saying that exposure is key. So letting people play before you make them pay. Before we sort of integrate AI into our KPIs or our performance measures, we need to be able to give people the chance to make some mistakes, have a bit of a learning curve on it, and create sort of sandboxes where there's no compliance risk. You can sort of come with demos, and you're figuring out where AI is going to have the highest impact or the most success in your individual role or your team's role. And then I think there's this idea of, to your point earlier, Steve, around something like copywriting. There was a CEO who was recorded saying, okay, well, we're not going to fire anybody, but we expect you to be able to do 5 times the amount of work you did yesterday, today, because of AI. And it's this idea of surveillance and having a leader who's coming in and trying to make changes overnight. And I think ultimately we're saying that support beats surveillance. So being able to encourage your employees and create power users, create well-being guardrails. So really saying you might be able to get more done, but while we're not about to shift to a 3-day work week, we're also not expecting you to quadruple your productivity outputs, the number of calls you're handling, whatever it might be, in at the same time. And then ultimately it comes down to communication. So whether you're a team lead, an individual just sharing sort of like what you've learned, what's worked, what hasn't worked, helping other people sort of take a lesson from something you might have had to learn the hard way or wasted some time with, or on the contrary, sharing a big success and a win on where you saved a bunch of time from figuring something out. It's this sort of leadership, top-down communication that really will set up the trust that enables people to lean into it. Maybe some people in certain teams or roles will come away and say, actually, there's not that much right now that I can do with this, but I've tried, I figured it out, and I think that sort of our current way of working is actually better, and we'll see if that changes in the future. But being stuck in some type of paralysis and sort of fear of not wanting to lean into the new technology, or conversely feeling like you've got to run before you walk, or crawl before you or run before you learn to crawl, is also not going to help anyone. So I think sort of there are a bunch of ideas on some pretty practical takeaways that anyone can implement tomorrow, and these are sort of the buckets that we're clustering them into. And so ultimately it comes down to just to sort of reiterate and double click on this. AI adoption is really, I think, still in its early days, but its impact on employee well-being and productivity and team culture is really clear. And what we're seeing is that people who use AI right now regularly, they're not just working faster. They seem to be happier. They seem to feel more purpose, more satisfied, and ultimately more optimistic, not just about present day, but where things are going in the future. And so their well-being is better as this. And again, well-being is not really a soft metric in 2025. It's sort of the signal of whether AI is working, not just technically, but culturally. And at its core, it is really this cultural shift. So I think if we ignore it, there's a lot more risk at hand than investing in it and seeing what can move faster and what we can learn from it. And so I think it comes down to this being this critical moment in shaping the future of work, industry by industry, business by business. And it really comes down to sort of starting by empowering employees with the right tools and training. And so hopefully if we sort of lean into AI technology and make it about championing the human, no one's going to be losing their jobs. Everyone will be a lot happier in their work, and organizations who lean into it will be able to reap the dual rewards of AI, both as a productivity driver, but ultimately kind of being the glue behind teams and culture and well-being overall. So
Paul, sorry. So John Glover has a quick question. John?
Absolutely.
Yeah, my comment was that this is probably one of the most meaningful sessions I've had with the SCTC for quite a while. And I'm wondering if the research that was done by this wellness organization has any way to identify or highlight the use cases that have demonstrated success.
They have. I don't have that in my slides right now, and we've actually just followed up. We are releasing 2 weeks from now a new piece of research we've just carried out with the London School of Economics. They've got a fantastic behavioral lab over there, and we've partnered with a professor who's both at the London School of Economics and actually over stateside at NYU to figure out what the best use cases are. And so we pulled almost 200 people into a lab, and we had them complete a whole bunch of tasks, and they completed the tasks both by typing prompts in or using a keyboard and going through these different tasks. And there were a whole bunch of tasks that were really meant to simulate the most common ones that most people would have to do at some point in their day. And then we had them do it also with voice inputs, kind of through the voice mode with Copilot or ChatGPT. And then we tried to map a landscape of exactly which tasks were better kept not for AI, that it wasn't really competent with right now, and then which ones were better to use with voice and which were better to use just with typing and on screen. And I would be really happy to follow up or share some data and some inputs, because we do have quite a nice mapping of task by task what we think the biggest value drivers are right now, and where maybe there's still a little bit of a maturity gap before we can go. So I don't have anything I can share with you right now, but we do actually have that, and I'd love to share it with you in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, that'd be
I-
great, Paul.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be a fantastic asset for the SCTC to stop all of the thrashing around and guessing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, Paul, just with the 2 minutes that we have left here, or 1 minute, just one statement, and that the Gen AI market, according to Business Week and some other resources that I looked at several months back, the shows that the Gen AI market will be 10 times the size of the UC and contact center CX markets combined. Okay, now in 7 years. So it's kind of amazing how it's going to grow. And when I've read some Gartner material and others, and the shift is as fundamental as the internet, and even someone coined it as electricity. It's that significant a change. So in the short term, we're all going to be feeling our way through. I think you gave us some great talking points today about how we need to be putting our oars in the water short term and recognize the employees, because without employees, forget it, right? The employee is the heart of the business. So great material, and thank you, Paul, for sharing, and Vern, thanks for grabbing Paul and getting him on today. This is great stuff.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate the time from everybody more than anything. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Paul.
gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Great
Thank you.
stuff.
Yes.
Thanks,
excellent.
everyone.
Thanks, Jim, everybody. Bye now.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
Bye.